Here, I'll go back a couple steps. Here is my, I'm recording now. But here is my two closed curves that I constructed from the plan. And I can just select those, go up to solid, my solid drop-down menu, go to extrude planar curve straight, and I want to extrude it up 20 feet. And I just want to make sure that the output is set to surface. And yes, I think that's, or sorry, surface and solid. And I can delete input. And enter. So now when I click on this, it's a closed extrusion. So notice that I have my properties, my object properties palette open. Whenever I'm doing modeling, I like to make sure that I have my object properties palette open at all times, because that allows me to really quickly figure out what I'm dealing with. In order to have a really nice digital model, you have to know what you're dealing with. And what I mean is, now if I have, I don't know, a couple of points here, and maybe there's a couple of lines in there, right? When I go to select that model, I can quickly see that the object type varies, and that down here I have 2 points, 1 curve, and 1 extrusion have been added to the selection. So I always need to know what I'm dealing with. So I'm just gonna get rid of those. It also tells me what layer it's on. It tells me many other things as you continue to develop your model. All right, so now that we're at this point, we're ready to start trying on some different hats. And everybody wears a different hat, right? So we need to kind of experiment with it. The hat is going to really give character to your project. It's ultimately the massing in your project is going to be defined by two things: the plan profile and the hat that it wears. And what I mean by hat is it a gable roof? Is it a shed roof? Is it there's a sawtooth roof? Is it a hip roof? Is it a vaulted roof? There's all different types. But I really want to make sure that I drive this home. You have to wear a known roof. It has to be known. You can't make up some random ass geometry and call that your roof. It has to be, keep it in the known in a known category. All right. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and call this my base condition, and I'm going to use my gumball. I'm going to option click, and I'm going to offset this maybe 50 feet. And I'm going to start working on my first iteration here. This is the one I'm going to put my first hat or roof on. First thing I'm going to do is use the bounding box command. So start typing bounding, and bounding box will come up, and I'm going to click enter, enter again. And I'm going to get this box that encompasses and binds my geometry. And notice that it's the smallest box possible that is on that X, Y, Z coordinate system. And it perfectly contains the geometry I've created. Once you've done that, this is going to be the start of our scaffold, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to duplicate some edges. So I'm going to type in dupe edge. And now I'm gonna choose some edges of this box. I want that one, and that one, and this one, and enter. Now I can get rid of my box. And you'll see why I want these. You'll see why I want these in a minute. So I'm going to join, right now, these are 4 open curves. I'm going to join them, and now it's a closed curve. So this is like a little window into my project. And I'm going to change this to, a different layer. I'm going to put it on a white layer. And I'm going to call it the scaffold. And I'm going to put it on there. So now that's on a white layer, and you'll see why I'm doing this here in a minute. So this little window and this kind of depth line is going to help me in creating some shapes for my roof, and you'll see how I do it in a minute. And which one you choose, which side you choose to work with has a big impact on the shape of your project. So let's go ahead and start. I'm gonna activate the hat layer. I'm gonna say my first one is a simple shed roof. So now I've used that box. I'm going from 20 feet to 10 feet. I've drawn a line. And now I'm going to create a surface, extrude curve, a long curve, and I'm going to use this curve to extrude along. So I'm using this curve to create the depth. I'm using this box to create the starting curve, and now I have my first roof scenario. And now I just need to trim to see what I got. So let's do it. All right, there is my shed roof. Now, obviously, I can tilt this shed roof in any number of ways, right? This is just one example. Let's do another one. I'm going to move it over in increments of 50. I'm going to take my little scaffold with me. I'm going to copy it though. And we will call this our shed. All right, next we'll do a gable. And a gable is probably the next most simple roof you could put on a massing. Now, remember, I'm using this scaffolding to help me create that gable, but I want that gable to line up nicely with my planned geometry. So let's say I want it to line up with this point here. So I'll go ahead and draw a line. perpendicular to my window. And then I will draw another line that starts to articulate the gable. And then I will mirror that line because I want that gable to have a consistent slope on both sides. I don't want it to be tipped one way or the other. Consistency is really important. So I'm going to use the mirror command. Whoops. And I'm going to start from this point, and I'm going to go down perpendicular and see it. It doesn't want to do it. I have to go in my front view. And you can change views. You can change views mid-command, and that's fine. So now I have, this is my gable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those two curves, I'm going to join them from two open curves to an open curve. And then I'll do the same thing that I did with the shed roof. I'll just run that along one of these perpendicular curves. So surface, create curve, along curve, click that one. And here's my gable roof. I'll trim it. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. You see how the ridge line here is in line with this plan change here. So there is a connection. So that looks pretty cool. And what's the relationship to the interior, right? You have to be thinking about the relationship to the interior. What's the difference here? What's the difference between our shed and our gable? Anybody? What's it doing to that interior space? Yeah, it's lifting it. So like if we look at our plan, on the shed, the high side is on this side of the gallery. But for the gable, the high point is in the middle of that space, right? So we just have to be conscious as we're creating our roofs, where the high points, where the low points are. I think we can imagine these as having vaulted ceilings. So like the Philip Johnson Sculpture Gallery, you can get really complex geometries out of like a simple extrusion, right? So let's do another gable, or let's do maybe not another gable. Let's try something else. We've got a shed, we've got a gable. Let's do a sawtooth roof. And I'm going to